Hey everybody, Ben here from Cinderblock Studios, and a couple of weeks ago I did a video on talking about cleaning your brushes and making sure you get all the acrylic paint out of your brush. This week you better get your copy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein ready, because we're going to take this brush, which I ruined, and we're going to bring it back to life. Stick around. So I have these two older, cheaper brushes that are absolutely pretty much identical, with the exception of the fact that this one's got tape on it and is still okay. This one I purposefully let paint dry into and put it at pretty much what a lot of artists would consider to be pretty much the worst case scenario. You let paint dry into it. The only place it moves is right sort of at the bottom where it meets the ferrule. Everything else totally dry, and you couldn't paint with this anymore. Most people at this point would throw the brush away. There is a trick to this though, and that trick is pretty simple. Rubbing alcohol. Now there's a video here on YouTube called Acrylics and Alcohol Don't Mix, or Do They? And that sort of is just a demonstration of a technique where you use isopropyl alcohol, either 70% or I think there's like a 91, but 70 is plenty. And you drizzle it on a surface of thinned out acrylics, and it creates this really interesting resist technique. It's actually very similar to how you might sprinkle water over top of a watercolor surface to get that same kind of resist technique. Well, that's what the alcohol does. Now, I'm no chemist, so I can't really get into the science of why it happens, but sort of the general things and what I do know about it is that alcohol of any kind, whether that be the stuff you drink or the stuff you put on your wounds, is a lower density than alcohol, so it would float on water, which is also why in some alcoholic drinks, if you're old enough to drink, by the way, you can light those drinks on fire. The stuff floats to the top. So when you mix it with acrylic, any water that's in the paint, whether being that water you mixed in with the paint, or any water that is sort of in maybe like an ink-like paint, like a Liquitex acrylic ink or a high flow, then that water will either float to the top. If there's no top for it to float to because it's on a flat surface, then it will just try and separate, and the two want to pull each other apart more or less. That's why that works. So, but that's wet paint, of course, we're talking about. We're talking about dry paint that's dried into this. Well, there's also this idea of what paint dries into your clothes. How do you get it out? Like, same thing. You can actually use rubbing alcohol to, one, get small areas of paint out of your clothes. I'm not talking about if your paints look like rags, it's not going to do anything for you. But little areas, you can get that out of your clothes that way. But today, again, we're going to clean this brush up. We're going to take a brush that is useless and bring it back to life. Alright, so up here close now, you can probably really see this a lot better in here. I put some white paint in, thinned it out with water, but didn't really rinse it. So it's dead. You know, I wouldn't try to paint with this at this point. That wouldn't be good. But this is how it used to look. It used to look like this, nice, soft, simple bristles. So we may not get it exactly like this, but we're gonna get it close. And if you're in a pinch, this will definitely work. So, rubbing alcohol, glass container. Pretty simple stuff. And you want to make note here that you don't want to add more water to this. You don't want to thin this out, because then you're diluting it, and acrylic, water, alcohol, you're not going to get the same effect. So this brush is going to go in here. I'm going to give this about 30 minutes. I'll be back then. Alright, so it's been about 30 minutes. Let's see where we're at. Kind of looks a little bit slimy. Check that out. We got individual bristles again. And quite a few of them. I'm actually gonna rub this between my fingers a bit. Maybe get a little bit more. Work on trying to pull that out. Just clean it. Dry it off, see where we're at. I'm actually seeing chips of paint. It's literally lifting that paint right out of the brush. Just go ahead and swish it at this point. And keep in mind, this is rubbing alcohol, so yeah, it smells considerably. If it bothers you, do this in a well-ventilated area. Outside would be ideal. Inside, not so much. Wipe that again. Guess what? That brush, all those individual bristles, same way it was originally. All of that paint, or at least most of it, is gone. Now I know what you're thinking. It'll be something like, oh, Ben, you didn't leave the paint in there that long. No, actually this paint has been dried in this brush since about 3 weeks ago when that brush cleaning video went up. It's actually getting cloudy in there. So, once again, this is the brush that it was, nice and soft. And once again, this brush, completely from what it was with barely moving to what it is now. Every brush, or every strand of those bristles, came right back to life. Okay, so I know for a lot of you that this video, this concept of actually bringing brushes back to life is going to be a pretty huge revelation for you. Normally I say if you learned something, well, this week you better have learned something, because if you didn't know that before, you know it now. And that's really one of the best ways to keep your brushes alive, especially if they have had dried and painted them for 3 weeks or for 3 years. You can actually keep your brushes and bring them back to life that way. And that was simple, you know? 30 minutes in rubbing alcohol. Boom! Easy. Just completely dissolves that dried paint and makes that brush usable once again. So, this has been from Cinderblock Studios, and for more videos like this, subscribe, consider supporting me on Patreon, and I already said all that other stuff again. See you guys next time. So what happens when you can't make a video for a couple weeks? You kind of forget how to do everything. Oh well. It happens, right? Also, for those wondering about the cough and how I'm feeling, I've got some stronger meds now. The cough isn't completely gone, but it's nowhere near what it was. So thanks guys for standing by me throughout that. Should probably fade this video out now, huh?